If I was to write a love song, I don't know what it would say. I can't tell you that love lasts forever. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it just stops breathing one day. Sometimes it limps, gasping to the finish line, and sometimes simply fades away.
Another song that I particularly stuck with me was poignant was the love song.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say a little bit about that?
A lot of the pieces that I write start with a question, and it allows me to answer, or a neat question that I could present in a piece and then answer in a way. And it was I think it was probably a particularly, I don't know about bitter, but oh, what's bitter without the poison? Um, I am jaded, you know. I am cynical. I am not bitter, but I am quite cynical, and my past has taught me to be so. Um, and I think I heard this happy, simple love song, and I probably thought, well, those idiots, they have no idea. Love is not this simple. It is not this pure and clean. That's not, they have, ugh. Well, okay. If I were to write a love song, what would that look like? What would I say? Whew. And the thought that I had such a strong reaction against this well-meaning, sweet, very happy love song. I went, geez, oh man. Well, my daughter, I am her example. So what I want to teach her honestly, but I want to give her a shot at not being so cynical. I want her to be wise, and she will be hurt. I want to minimize that, but she should have hope. Crap. Well, how do I approach that? So I with the image of my daughter in front of me, and as she gets older and she wants to know about love from this broken, scarred, handicapped person that has a very um a very dismissive, sometimes, and a very cynical view of love. What would I say? Well, first off, I will take all of those cliches about love and tell her what happened to me. Like, sure, love gives you wings, but there is no insurance policy on that. And if you fall, and you likely will several times, it's going to hurt and nothing will ever feel that painful. Not in that way. All right. Love brings out the best in people. Sure. And it also makes people crazy. It makes people monsters. And I've seen that, and that is terrifying to behold. And people don't talk about that. The risk and the reward or the risk is how I teach it first in that song. Like, sure, here's the thing that everybody says is great, and here's what I've seen. And I'm doing a disservice to my daughter if I am not brutally honest. But her experience is not my experience. And even for all of my past, I know that my life and my heart is not without hope. And I've tried to collect my scars and use them to be productive going forward. But I didn't want to give love a death sentence for my daughter. What a terrible thing for me to do.
It was clear that you had this intention of passing this on to someone, and you let me know that it was for your daughter, and you described it as your best visit to lunacy.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you is saying, like, skateboarding can be fun, however, be prepared. Splunking can be fun, however, keep your eyes wide open. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying to your daughter here. Keep your eyes wide open. Keep your boundaries. Keep your sense of self.
Yeah.
Don't let a relationship define who you are.
And that is one thing and that I'm appalled by and disgusted by, but of course I was too. Those expectations breed disappointment. Is that the saying? But it's true. Expectations also, once you set your expectations on a certain level, you can handle almost anything. And so being raised on, and I'm not a big politic person, but being raised on Disney princesses and happily ever after, and I don't want to swear into the microphone, but that's bull. Like that is absolute.
We know all the words.
Oh, I do. I did not want to be the one to break the swearing barrier. I didn't want to be the first one. But that is, we are hurting our children by perpetuating that myth where love exists with a whole plethora of other challenges.
Well, one of the challenges, and we can either view them as challenges or we can view them as death sentences. We can view them as traps. We can view them as dark holes. And you and I spoke earlier before we started to record about your daughter being 9 years old. And unfortunately, that's just about the time where young ladies begin to become influenced by their peers, by the media, by sight, sounds, and images all around them. And they begin to try to conform their own sense of self to what they perceive others want them to be and how to fit in. And it's so important that young ladies find their own voice. And it's interesting that you bring up the princess thing because I did it with my daughter when she was young. She's my princess, my little princess. Well, when you think of princesses, do you think of strong, willed women who make their own choices? Or do you think of little dainty little things dressed up like flowers who need saved and protected?
Yeah. The latter. Now, people have, in Disney and everybody else has made efforts lately at here's a strong woman who makes her own choices and she defies the odds. But the fact that we are just now recognizing that, and even with those strong choices, and it's not male female, it's this idea that love will beat all odds. It won't. It will beat some, and there is nothing more powerful than love. I do believe in that. If you can live with that amount of sacrifice and that amount of strength to hold on to that in spite of everything, there is nothing stronger.
We often challenge people on our program to create themselves rather than define themselves, to connect with their authentic self, to not what they have to offer to the world. However, what I challenge, particularly young ladies sometimes, is to create a profile, but not to put on a website, but not what she has to offer, but what the requirements are to be with me. What are the requirements to be with me? And I urge them, do not settle.
And it's a very unnatural way to approach. And I've only just started trying to be cognizant for that myself. And so I'm extra sensitive because my daughter is watching me. But that idea where people will rant and rail, why doesn't he love me? I need him to love me. And my reaction now is, why would you give yourself to someone who doesn't love you? Why? You are obviously not compatible. The whole thing about dating again and having a daughter and that being a deal breaker for some people would be terribly offensive. I'm worried about it being too soon to bring up the fact that I have a child. I'm talking to other friends about that. It was like, no, that's one of the first things I drop. Be like, I have a daughter. She's the most important thing to me. If that's not good for you, good. We're not compatible. No love lost. Have a great life. And I'm not bitter about that. My needs are not compatible with your needs. Have a good life. I wish you well, but we are not compatible. When you try to force those puzzle pieces, No wonder you're breeding unhappiness. You want the love of somebody who is incapable of loving you, or at least in the way that you want. And you don't you value yourself so little that that's what you want?
Well, and again, when we ask people to create themselves, we ask people to define themselves. And what does define you? Sometimes people, as everyone knows out there, I'm a behavioral health therapist, and when somebody comes in the room and they give an excuse of, well, that's my bipolar making me do that. I'll say, when you walk into a room, is that how you introduce yourself? Hi, I'm bipolar.
Right.
Or hi, I'm this, or hi, I'm that. What does define you? And that's one of the things we ask people to take a step back and look at the situation and define themselves, create themselves. And when you're talking about living intentionally, we did an episode once on what we call pop-ins, and that's like popping into reality. So, oh my gosh, I am alive. All of a sudden, everything feels so clear,
Yeah.
and you're crisp and clear, and you're right there. And some people fear them. However, we actually help people to be popped in more often, popped into their life. I believe that we'll continue this conversation at another time.
That'd be great.
It's been delightful. There's so many more rooms in the house that we'd like to explore here, so many nooks and crannies that we haven't uncovered that we'd like to perhaps go through a few more wormholes if you would be willing to join us
Absolutely.
one more time.
It's my
That's
pleasure.
great. That's great. And if you have any comments or questions concerning this podcast, we'd certainly like to find it, and we'll be putting up a link to Cup of Joe Productions, which Joanna operates under, and we'll be putting a link as to where you can order her CD, her magnum opus, Epiphany, which I highly recommend. And until then, we often end this with a challenge: fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Perhaps unplug the TV and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we ask that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself, do a kindness for another. Namaste. Till all are free, none are free.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.